Hello, my name is Bill. In this video I have my December wrap-up and what I'm reading in January. So in December I finished Foreigner by C.J. Cherryh, which had started in November. So this was a buddy read with Scott from the Bookish Bryants. So it was a very good read, but Scott didn't particularly like the politics in here, but I've seen that as part of understanding how the aliens' minds work differently, how they're truly alien, since their minds evolved, biological and cultural evolution is completely separate from humanity, so their ways are somewhat incomprehensible. So this book starts off, it's like a couple of short stories. The first one is it's a colony ship from Earth, and they run into problems, and when they come out of subspace or warp drive, or I can't remember the term she uses in here, they have no idea where they're at. They don't recognize any stars, and they're out of fuel because they were supposed to be close to the place they were going to colonize, but that's nowhere in sight, and Earth is nowhere in sight. So the system, the closest system, is uninhabitable. So they spend time there refueling the starship, and many of the workers have died or become extremely ill from the radiation in that system. So after they finish refueling, they head off towards a star that looks like the right type of star to have a habitable planet. So the second story, it's called Book 2. They arrive at a system with a habitable planet, but it's occupied by aliens, and but they're alien technologies at a pre-industrial level. So the humans build a space station in orbit instead of landing and interfering with the alien culture. And they spend their time repairing and refueling the ship. But some of the workers rebel and land on the planet, and then the colony ship heads off to look for another place. So book 3, which is the rest of the book. So book 3 is most of the book. The first 2 is just basically short stories. So book 3 is about the conflicts between the aliens and the humans that have landed and decided to stay behind. Atvi is the name of the aliens. So I enjoyed it very much. Now I'm looking forward to reading the rest of the series. About 21 books, I think it is. Then I read Call for the Dead by John le Carré. So this is his first novel, the first George Smiley book. So this starts off with a parent suicide that George Smiley was given the task of interviewing this person that worked in the Foreign Office because of his, during college he was involved in a communist group. So when he interviewed this guy, he determined that he was no longer involved in the communist party, and that his former involvement in his youth would not affect his work at the Foreign Office. So he told him there was nothing to worry about. But then the next day he apparently had committed suicide, and the story his wife gave was that he was upset from being interviewed about his Communist Party activity. But George Smiley didn't accept the official story, so he had to figure out what was really going on. So apparently he has it all figured out by the end of the book, but once you read Spy Who Came In From the Cold, you discover that there was something George Smiley missed in this book, or he kept secret. So you can read The Spy Who Came In From the Cold without reading this book, but It's just a little bit of background information that would be interesting to have before reading The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. So this was my second read, so I read this maybe 4 years ago. So I was reading it for Remember December, and also part of my project to read all of the books by John le Carré. So next I read the Midwich Cuckoos by John Wyndham. So this was also a reread for Remember December. I'd read this less than a year ago, so wasn't quite interesting enough to have read it twice in the same year, but it still was a good read. So it's an interesting take on the alien invasion story. Then I read Hyperion by Dan Simmons. So this was also a reread for Remember December, but this one I'd read maybe 20 years ago, so I didn't remember very much of it. So in here there's 7 pilgrims they're on a pilgrimage to time tombs to meet the Cherryh, this guy with metal barbs all over him. That apparently the Cherryh is traveling, it's going backwards in time, and there's an anomaly near the time tombs where time is going backwards. So this scene on the cover shows basically the ship where they travel across this flat area of grass. In a sailing ship, but underneath is a big wheel for it to go travel across the grass, flat land. So the seven pilgrims are supposed to tell their story while they're traveling to the time tombs. So, but only 6 of them get to tell their story. And then the end of the book sort of just stops. So I guess you have to wait till the second book to find out what happens when they get to the time tombs. So it was a very good read. So I actually finished that on January 1st. here's what I'm reading in January. So I'm read more than half of this book in one day. Murder of Quality by John le Carré. So it's a private school, and it's elite private school, and the wife of one of the instructors is murdered. So George Smiley is asked to go see if he can figure out what happened. And also it's another case where he doesn't accept the official story, and he goes and figures out what's really going on. So it's also a good read. So I also read this one maybe 4 years ago. And then next I'll read The Chrysalids by John Wyndham. So it was probably about 3 years ago I read this one, and also probably 50 years ago, so this will be my third read. Then I'll read The Fall of Hyperion. So maybe I can find out what happens when I arrive at the time tombs. So the cover picture here will make a little more sense if you've read Hyperion first. So this one was from 1990, and the cover is by Gary Rudell. Hyperion was 1989, and the cover is Gary Rudell. And Foreigner was 1994, and the cover is Michael Whalen. So Michael Whalen's done several of the covers for the series, but not all of them. Someday I'll make a video where I go through the whole series. So then if I get finished The Fall of Hyperion before the end of the month, I might read the first book in the Great Book of Amber. So this is the 10 books in the series put into one volume. So Michael K. Vaughan is reading this in January, and also Mindy. So I can't remember Mindy's channel name, but for me to read the whole book in January, I'd have to forget about all my other plans I had made for January. So I'll see if I can just get the first book read. But I have book 2 and book 4 in mass market paperbacks. So that's all for this video. See you in the next one.